My son and his wife are faking children's therapy outcomes and billing for sessions that never happened. The board and donors cheer because the lies arrive on glossy slides and everybody wants to believe. I ended it with a footnote my son celebrated on stage. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Marcus Hale. I am 68 years old, a retired structural engineer, a Marine from a lifetime so far back it feels like a story someone told me, and the grandfather of a 10-year-old girl who takes things apart before she decides if she should trust them. I prefer the smell of maple shavings to the weight of a room staring at me, but I have learned that people listen when a man who measures load limits speaks slowly and refuses to move. The night I understood what my son had built, the fluorescent lights in the elementary cafeteria hummed like weak bees. Behind the folding tables, posters of planets held themselves together with tape and hope. My granddaughter, Zoe, had hot-glued silver glitter onto the lip of her papier-mâché volcano because lava deserves sparkles. She had asked me to cut a neat circle in the top so the soda could fountain without splashing her new shoes. "Tell me when to pour," she whispered. "When the fizz is steady," I said. "Not when it is excited. Steady is honest." She nodded, serious, and tipped the vinegar just enough. The fizz rose and crowned. Children clapped. In the back of the room, my son, Eric, raised a hand to someone behind me, the kind of vague wave that means you are both popular and in a hurry. His wife, Lila, was arranging brochures on a table dressed as if someone had explained elegance to a municipal budget. Their clinic's name, Horizon Path Behavioral Center, was everywhere, on a banner, on a trifold, on a scatter of pens that wrote in the kind of blue ink that looks trustworthy. I helped them pick that name. Years ago, my wife, Ruth, had described a good day with a struggling child as a horizon you can walk toward. I built bridges. She built routines. She made charts with stickers and told parents to praise effort instead of outcomes. When she died, a clean, unfair death that taught me how air can be both abundant and insufficient, I held on to her phrases the way an old man holds on to a penknife. It felt like something of hers that still cut true. "Dad," Eric said, appearing at my shoulder with a smile calibrated for donors and fathers, "are you staying for our presentation after the science fair?" Quick slideshow. People love seeing what their money does. Slideshow, I repeated, as if the word itself might teach me anything. "She is doing so well," Lila added, passing on my blind side to adjust a tablecloth that did not need adjusting. "Zoe, I mean. We will show her graph tonight." "Her graph," I said. "Outcomes speak," Lila said. The science fair thinned as children took their trophies and their sugar highs home. Paper plates slid into trash bags. Glitter gathered into little comet tails along the floor. Someone dimmed the lights. Lila tapped a microphone and smiled the way salespeople smile when they already have the credit card number. "Our outcomes speak for themselves," she said. On the screen behind her, a line rose in a soft, elegant curve. It looked like a Model S curve from a textbook. Another line rose precisely the same way. And another. My eyes moved to the axis, weeks along the bottom, percentage compliance on the vertical as if human emotion had agreed to be a neat fraction. One line had small initials near it, Z.H. Zoe, Lila said brightly. 6 months to meaningful change. I took out my phone because I am a man who prefers proof to feelings. On the date that corresponded to one of the bigger jumps on Zoe's graph, I had taken her to the lake. We had stood at the water's edge with our shoes off and our toes cold and had tried to decide if the wind was a mood or a fact. We had taken a selfie because she likes to document what she calls learning adventures. The timestamp on my photo was exactly in the middle of the 2 hours the slide claimed Zoe had spent in therapy. I looked at the next dot on the graph. That same week, on a Thursday afternoon, I had taught her how to open a toaster without scarring her fingers. We had lined the springs up on a towel and I had explained that a spring never forgets. It either returns or it breaks. The same day, Horizon Path had billed me for 2 hours of applied behavior therapy. I pushed my tongue against my teeth to keep my face still. I have learned that people doubt anger but believe quiet. Average time to improvement is 6 months, Lila continued. We will add capacity when we get the next round of funding. No child should wait. She clicked to a photo of Ruth pulled from our guest room, where I keep her framed notes and the index card she carried in her pocket. The clinic had lifted one of Ruth's sentences and turned it into a slogan, "Easy does not mean gentle." I kept looking at Zoe's initials on the graph. Then I looked at my granddaughter, standing off to the side with a popsicle stain on her sleeve, unaware that her line was telling a story she did not live. I felt in my chest the particular pressure I get when a beam is taking weight it was never designed to take. The invoice arrived the next Monday. Horizon Path's billing email uses a soft blue font. It looks like something you would receive from a spa. The charges were precise, for sessions last week, 2 hours each, coded according to a manual that is supposed to be specific. The dates told me my granddaughter had received therapy at times she was in my truck reading the instructions on a fishing license aloud. I called my son. "It is batch billing," he said in a tone that implied he was doing me a favor by explaining something beyond my grasp. We enter sessions after the fact sometimes to round out the calendar. The work happened. We do not always finalize the exact times in the moment. That is normal. Does the rounding out happen to align with my wallet? I said. Because the invoice amounts to exactly the limit on my monthly support. "Dad," he said, and the word came out sharp, "do you want Zoe to get help or not?" "I want the help to be real," I said. "And I want your numbers to be true." "Everyone is under pressure," he said. "You just do not understand how hard it is to run a clinic." He said you just do not understand with the same weight he used as a teenager to say you just do not get me. There is a particular kind of son who mistakes his father's silence for ignorance. It is a painful thing to recognize when the son is yours. I hung up and pulled a yellow legal pad from the kitchen drawer. On the top line, I wrote Horizon Path. On the next, I wrote outcomes and drew a box around the word until the pencil dented the paper. Then I began measuring. This is the part of the story where people often want me to confess doubt or indecision. I will confess fear. I was afraid of blowing up my son's life. I was afraid of being wrong. I was afraid of hurting my granddaughter. Fear does not have to stop your hands if your hands know what they are doing. First, I pulled every invoice and every calendar entry for 3 months and lined them up on the dining room table. I set out rulers the way other people set out placemats. I mapped each charge against my own records of the times I had Zoe. I do not write in a diary, but I text my friend Arnell when I pick her up and send a picture when we pull a good nail from a plank. I had timestamps for almost everything. In 3 months, I found 42 sessions billed during times I could prove Zoe was with me. That is not rounding. That is policy. Second, I opened the state licensing website in my browser. It is a dreadful sight. The fonts do not match. Links break and send you to PDF scans of faxed forms with signatures that look like the paper is tired. It is exactly the kind of site that liars count on honest men not to use. Lila's license had expired in April. The clinical director, listed on the Horizon Path website with a handsome headshot and a list of letters after her name, had surrendered her license in another state under a consent decree. The phrase failure to supervise sat on the page as if it had always belonged there. My wife would have navigated that page in 1 minute. Without her, it took me 2 hours. I wrote down what I found in block letters and printed the pages with the date visible in the margin. Third, I pulled the clinic's tax filings. Nonprofits file paperwork for anyone with a dull afternoon to read. Horizon Path paid above-market rent to an entity that shared my son's home mailing address. Consulting fees went to a limited liability company with no employees and the same initials as a firm I found once in the tags of a vacation photo on my daughter-in-law's social media. I traced the lines with a pencil like a carpenter works a template. I know how money hides and how it leaves a line in the dust no matter how careful you think you are. I told no one. The older I get, the more I respect the power of a plan kept quiet until it is ready to stand on its own legs. I needed one more thing, proof that what I had seen was not a paperwork accident but a pattern. Arnell, from my old unit, is a quiet man with steady thumbs. He is raising his sister's boy, Davion, with the kind of love that makes a teenager taller than he is stand still when he speaks. I asked Arnell to bring Davion to Horizon Path for an intake, to ask certain questions, and to record the meeting using a device that is legal in our state when one party consents. Arnell consented. He did not like the feel of it. I did not like the feel of it. We did it anyway. Afterward, Arnell came to my shop and spilled a handful of machine screws onto the workbench while he talked, a nervous habit he had not had when we were young. She promised 14 hours a week, he said. Before a counselor had met him. She said she could guarantee progress if I committed to the program. That line rang a bell with something your wife used to say. Ruth never guaranteed a child would move on our schedule, I said. She guaranteed a parent would not be alone while they learned to help. She called herself lead clinician, Arnell said. Is that something you can call yourself when your license is expired? Not in this state, I said. He showed me the recording. The sound quality was rough, but the words were clear. Promise, guarantee, 6 months, outcomes, compliance. I made a copy and put it in the manila folder where I keep my living will. Are you sure you want to do this, Mark? Arnell asked. He never calls me Marcus, just as I have never called him anything but his full name. Marines are funny about names. I am not sure about anything except that children should not be turned into graphs that lie, I said. And that truth has to land somewhere heavier than a whisper in the back of a cafeteria. What about your boy? I looked at my hands. They are the hands that fixed his truck on the side of I-70 in 1999 and stilled his shoulders when he cried at 12 because a girl did not pick him for a skating partner. They are the same hands that gave him the down payment for his first house. I have done a lot for those shoulders and that boy. I never thought I would set a trap for them. I will give him one clean, public chance to tell the truth, I said. If he does not take it, I will make the truth unavoidable. I wrote a new plan on a fresh sheet. It had 3 parts and an underline that left an impression on the pad pages underneath. Part 1, put the truth where someone with a duty would have to read it. I filed formal complaints with the State Psychology Board and with the Attorney General's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. My attorney friend Maria helped me draft the language so that I did not sound like an angry father but like a witness with dates and documents. We attached the invoices, the calendar matches, the recording, the license printouts, and an affidavit in which I swore that I had paid for services billed on dates where I had my granddaughter. I walked those packets to the post office and paid for tracking as if they were heirlooms. Part 2, protect Zoe. I asked Maria to file a petition for temporary guardianship that would activate only if the state ever found that her parents had jeopardized her care or safety for profit. When she slid the papers across her desk to me, my name looked both larger and smaller than it usually does. I signed in a hand so steady it surprised me. Part 3, Set the Trap. Horizon Path's annual gala was coming up. Eric had ridden me hard about underwriting his audiovisual costs. "The quotes are killing me, Dad." I told him I would sponsor the program in Ruth's memory and match donations up to $10,000 if the board would rename their mentorship program to Ruth's phrase, "Practice with dignity." "You always loved that word," he said, pleased with himself for remembering. "Add a footnote," I said. "All matching funds are contingent upon verified compliance with state licensure requirements and truthful public reporting of outcomes." "Dad," he said, "the donors will think you do not trust us." "Add it or I am out," I said. "Make it 12-point font if it offends your sense of decor." He sent me the draft. I checked it 3 times. The footnote sat politely at the bottom like a coaster under a too-sweet drink. The board approved the deck. I saved the email and printed it because I do not trust clouds with anything except weather. I did not sleep much in the week before the gala. When I did sleep, I revisited rooms where Ruth was still alive and our kitchen smelled like onions and hope. I do not dwell on what might have been. That week I did, and it made me kinder to my living self in the morning. The day of the gala, I picked up a suit that fits me like a man who knows he is not the main show. I drove to the community center slowly because a cautious driver has more chances to change his mind. I did not change my mind. The ballroom was dressed in what people who have not seen a grand ballroom think a grand ballroom looks like. The chandelier hung from a grid that would not pass inspection under my name. The carpet pattern fought with the table centerpieces. Volunteers in black shirts and hopeful hair explained the silent auction baskets with the fervor of missionaries. Photos of smiling children sat in frames beside mason jars labeled hope. I was careful to place my cynicism in my inside pocket and button the jacket over it. People mean well. People also mean to keep the story they want to tell. "Marcus," said Helen, the board chair, a retired principal with good posture born of years telling teenagers to put both feet on the ground. "We are grateful for your support." Ruth was a treasure. "She still is," I said. She disliked shallow words dressed as depth. She would have preferred a kitchen to a chandelier. Helen smiled, but her gaze was assessing, the way a teacher waits to see if a student is quoting or understanding. Lila took the stage with a smooth step and perfect makeup. Eric hovered at her elbow like a politician who had learned how to appear humble. The lights drenched them both in soft blue. People in town love a success story. It covers a multitude of oversight. "Impact," Lila said in her opening line. "Tonight, we celebrate impact." Slides glided across the screen. Clean graphs. Testimonials. A short video of a child clapping on cue. In the second row, a man I recognized from the bank wiped his eyes. I did not look away from the numbers. If I allow my eyes to wander, I distrust my mind later. At last, the slide I had paid for appeared, the Ruth Hale Fund matching gift. The footnote sat in its small font at the bottom. I felt my pulse hop once, then settle into the measured cadence it had in a different decade when different drums set the pace. I had asked for 3 minutes to speak about Ruth. They invited me on stage with the warmth of people who believe they know exactly what you will say. I put both my hands on the lectern. The wood was cheap. I prefer oak with a tighter grain when the words matter. Thank you for honoring my wife, I said. Ruth loved two words, practice and dignity. She believed some things should be measured and that some should not, and she was careful about which was which. I clicked the remote. The first image was a photograph of Zoe and me at the lake on a Tuesday. I could name and describe and smell, algae, sunlight, potato chips. Beside it, in a clean column, the invoice line that billed me for 2 hours of therapy that afternoon. I had magnified the date and hour until they could be read from the back table without squinting. On this date, I said, my granddaughter was listed as receiving 2 hours of therapy. She was with me. We threw a line into the water and let the minnows ignore us. A hum moved through the room. People interpret silence as consent or confusion. I prefer to supply it with facts. Errors happen, I said. But 42 errors in 3 months is a policy. Licensing lapses happen. But an expired license paired with promises recorded on a legally obtained audio is a pattern. Horizon Path's website calls a woman clinical director. The file in another state calls her something else. Lila stepped forward as if proximity might interrupt a slide. It only made her face appear larger on the screen behind her. My son's smile had gone white at the corners. It looked like plaster over damp drywall. I clicked again. The slide with the matching gift appeared, then the footnote grew large enough to cover the screen. All matching funds are contingent upon verified compliance with state licensure requirements and truthful public reporting of outcomes. I will not match lies, I said. I kept my voice low. It carried. Freeze new intakes tonight. Commission an independent audit with a firm I will name and you will hire. Suspend any staff whose licenses are expired or in consent decree until proof says otherwise. If you do that, I will match every donation pledged before this moment to the dollar. If you do not, I will withdraw and I will send this footnote and everything it implies to the people with both the badge and the budget to care. Dad, Eric said, in a voice that still used the boy register, the one that always made me weaker than I liked, we can handle this internally. You have had that chance, I said. This is the part where adults choose. Helen lifted her hand. She did not look at me. She looked at Lila. Effective immediately, she said into the microphone. We freeze intakes. We commission an audit. Licensure proof on my desk by 9 on Monday. If we find what Mr. Hale has described, we will do what is required under law and decency. Required under law and decency, I repeated softly, so only the front row could hear. I was not being clever. I was reminding myself that this was not vengeance. It was housekeeping. A process server I had paid out of pocket because I wanted no missteps in the paper trail waited near the door with manila envelopes that looked like they should contain menus. He handed one to Lila and one to Eric. Temporary guardianship papers. Their hands recoiled as if paper burned. You are insane, Lila said to me under her breath. You have always been jealous that people listen to us and not you. I prefer that people listen to rules, I said. You are destroying your son, she hissed. He is doing that, I said. I am ending a practice. The weeks after that night were made of meetings and procedures and moments where hope stands in the doorway and refuses to commit. Horizon Path's audit took 6 weeks and expanded to include records I had not even asked for. It found duplicate session notes, backdated entries, graphs recycled across children with initials swapped in a file name, parent training module that contained whole paragraphs lifted from Ruth's old handouts with the cautions removed and the certainties inflated. The clinical director's signature had been copied and pasted after suspension. It is astonishing what people do when they believe PDF is a disguise. The Attorney General's office sent an investigator whose necktie had a stain on it and whose shoes were well polished. He came to my house and sat at my kitchen table like a neighbor waiting for coffee. He flipped through my folder and asked the kind of questions that show training more than suspicion. "You are very organized, sir," he said. "I am very tired," I said. I thought this would be a talk with my son. It became paperwork. "I am sorry your family is in this," he said. "I am not sorry you made it so easy to see." "I do not want easy," I said. "I want accurate." He smiled like he was saving the line for a training manual. "Did you intend the footnote to create this moment?" he asked. "I intended for there to be no plausible denial," I said. I learned in my work that if you want a structure to fail where you can see it instead of where you cannot, you stress the joint you do not trust. If it is sound, it holds. If it is weak, it breaks where you can stand under it with a jack. "Your son," he said, not asking, but giving me a chance to say something kinder than the facts. "My son," I said. I loved him before he had the capacity to lie with this much polish. I still love him. That is why I am standing where the pieces fall. He closed the folder gently. Men who have seen things fall are careful with paper even when the paper is not fragile. During the audit, I kept showing up for Zoe. I picked her up from school and we drove past the clinic without speaking. She watched the building through the truck window like she was expecting it to speak and say what it meant. Once, at a red light, she asked without turning her head, "Am I in trouble for not getting better?" "You are not a test that can go wrong," I said. "You are a person. We will help you learn the things you want to learn. The schedule other people imagine is not our business." "What if Daddy is mad at you?" she said. "He is," I said. "I can hold that. It is heavy, but it is a weight that has a place to sit." "What if Mommy is mad at me?" she said, barely audible. "You are a child," I said. "Adults should manage their own anger so it does not spill onto you." She nodded. Her shoulders lowered a centimeter. When you love a child, you learn to measure in centimeters, not miles. Eric called once. He left a message because I stopped taking his calls during the process. The message sounded like a man standing in a room that keeps changing shape. "You could have come to me," he said to my voicemail. "This is cruel. You have never respected how hard I work. You hated that Lila made my ideas bigger. You want to control everything." I played the message twice, then deleted it. I have no appetite for a story where I am jealous of my son. If I wanted to control everything, I would have left the trap out and kept my money on the table. Instead, I demanded rules bigger than any hail. That is the opposite of control. That is surrender to something steadier. When the audit results went public, the room we had all been in turned again into the cafeteria and the VFW hall and the grocery store aisle where people decide whether to look you in the eye or pretend they are captivated by lettuce. Parents called me. Some thanked me as if I had pulled their children out of a well. Some demanded an apology because they had believed the frame and did not want anyone tapping the glass. I understand both reactions. I answered every call. I said the same thing. Your child is not a graph. Your hope is not a commodity. Find a clinician who will show you their license without being asked and who will teach you to measure what matters. Zoe's guardian ad litem interviewed me. He was a young man who needed new shoes and asked good questions. How will you help her with afternoons when transitions are hard? How will you talk about her parents in her hearing? What will you do if she misses her mother? I will tell the truth she can carry, I said. Not more than she needs. Not less than she deserves. She will see her mother when there is a plan that does not ask Zoe to carry adult pain. At the guardianship hearing, the judge wore her reading glasses at the end of her nose and did not look over them unless she wanted a witness to feel 14 years old. When it was my turn, she asked precise questions. I had precise answers. She granted temporary guardianship to me with conditions and time limits because judges know better than to grant anything forever. In a hallway afterward that smelled like tile and hand sanitizer, Zoe pressed her face into my shirt. Will Daddy be mad at you forever? She asked. He will be mad for as long as he needs to be, I said. Forever is a word that rarely tells the truth. Are you mad at him forever? She said. I am tired, I said. Tired is not the same as mad. We still went to the lake on Tuesdays. She still took apart the toaster on Thursdays. We added a clock to our workbench. She put each gear in a row, labeled them with a strip of painter's tape, and made a diagram in pencil. When she asked what made the whole thing keep time, I showed her the balance wheel. It swings back and forth and does not care what you want from it, I said. It sets the pace. And if you lie to it, she said, her eyes narrow with the kind of suspicion that keeps children safe. You can lie to a person, I said. You can lie to a room. You can lie to a judge if you want to go to prison. But you cannot lie to a balance wheel. It is not listening to you. It is listening to physics. She nodded like I had confirmed something she had decided the day she was born. Lila pled guilty to 2 counts of insurance fraud and 1 count of practicing without a current license. She cried in court with the finesse of someone who had practiced crying in a mirror. Eric accepted a plea and paid restitution with a face that had aged 10 years in 10 weeks. He did not go to prison. I am glad. Prison is a story that eats entire families. He lost his job. He lost the board position he bragged about at holiday meals. He did not lose his chest-beating sense that I had done this to him. That remains intact and it is not my project to dismantle it. The board dissolved Horizon Path. Helen came to my porch with a check and a confession. I told myself a story, she said, twisting the check between her fingers as if trying to make the paper softer. That the clean graphs were a sign of competence. I should have known better. Clean lines in people are as suspicious as clean lines in budgets. Ruth used to say easy is an apology when it means careless, I said. And a compliment when it means steady. I should have asked more questions, she said. You did when it counted, I said. You froze. You audited. You suspended. Those are not glamorous words. They are adult words. We built a fund in Ruth's name with rules that do not care how easy a smile is. Every provider we support puts licensure on a wall where a child can read it without standing on their toes. Every outcome report includes raw numbers and definitions parents can repeat in a kitchen at 7:30 a.m. The fund pays for parent training that begins with this sentence: your child is not a system to fix, they are a person to learn. When a clinic asks for money to expand, we ask to see their progression criteria and their waitlist management. We do not fund a promise. We fund a practice. One afternoon, months after the dust settled into the kind you can live with, a reporter came to my house. I had avoided them. I did not want to turn my son's failures into someone else's lesson plan, but this one had been careful and fair in her coverage. She sat in my garage on a stool and watched me sand a cutting board until the grain told me to stop. Do you have any regrets? She asked. Many, I said. But not about the sequence. I regret that I did not ask harder questions earlier. I regret that I wanted to believe a slide because it had my wife's face on it. I do not regret the footnote. It is a small thing with rough edges. It felt like me. She laughed softly, not unkind. Why not just go to him quietly, she said. I did, I said. And when he did not listen, I gave him a stage, I said. And I gave him a chance to choose between the lie and the rules in front of people he needed money from. I find that choices in front of an audience strip away fantasy faster than choices in a kitchen. People will say you did this because you wanted to be right, she said. I wanted to set the pace to true, I said. Right is a slippery word. True is a plumb line. The world holds better when things hang from it. She quoted that line. I sounded smarter in the paper than I do in person. That is the danger of being careful with words. They look polished even when your hands are shaking. Eric sees Zoe under supervision for now. He comes with his jaw set. He brings gifts she does not need. He wants to skip steps. He always has. Sometimes he asks if I am proud of myself as if pride is a disease he has diagnosed in me. I tell him I am proud of Zoe's balance wheel and of Ruth's phrase and of Helen's spine. I do not tell him whether I am proud of me. That is not a useful conversation. The last time we spoke without a mediator, he stood in my driveway and stared at the garage like it was a stage and I was beneath it. You loved your rules more than you loved me, he said. I loved the truth more than I loved your version of you, I said. I love you more than either, which is why I did not let your version of you win. You always think you know best, he said. No, I said. I think I know what happens when weight rests on a compromised line. I have stood under beams I miscalculated. I will not stand under a lie. He left in a gray car whose lease I now knew I had inadvertently subsidized with my first donation to the clinic. I went back into the garage and planed a stubborn board until its edge kissed square. It is a relief to work on wood. Wood does not pretend it is anything other than itself. You can see the knots. You can smell the sap. You can hear when the blade is wrong by the pitch of the cut. On a Sunday morning in late September, the school held a poetry reading in the same cafeteria where all this had started. Zoe stood on the stage in a yellow dress with sneakers. She read a poem she had written about clocks and honesty. She did not use the word fraud. She did not need to. When she hit the phrase balance well, the room went quiet the way a room does when birds pause before a storm. She finished. People clapped. She looked for me. I had positioned myself where she would find my face in the first 3 seconds. On the ride home, she asked if we could stop at the junk store to look for old machines to take apart. We can, I said. We will look for something with a secret. What if it has 2, she said. Then we will make a chart, I said. And we will not pretend we know the second one until we find it. She laughed a small, careful laugh. For a child who has learned that adults can be incorrect on purpose, laughter returns in inches. Back home, we spread a fan on the workbench that had given up moving air. She lifted each blade with a tenderness that made me ache. She asked why some screws strip and some do not. She asked how long it takes for rust to become the whole story. She asked if the whistle the fan made before it died meant anything. It meant warning, I said. We heard it. We ignored it. We told ourselves a story about how it was nothing. We will not do that again, she said. No, I said. We will not. At dinner, I opened the mail and found a small envelope with my name written in block letters, round and careful. Inside was a note from a mother I do not know. It said, "You closed a door that was hurting us." My son cried when we told him we were not going back. Then he slept through the night for the first time in a year. Thank you for making it not our fault to leave. I put the note on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a trout. When Zoe asked what it was, I read it to her. She nodded and did not ask for details. She is learning that some stories need only their center told. That is the end, if you like things tidy. But families are not tidy. They are weather. The forecast changes. Some days, Eric texts me a picture of a bird he sees on his run and writes the name underneath as if I had taught him the word for turtle dove, when in fact I did not. Some days he sends a bare question about Zoe's school. Some days he sends nothing and I am grateful because I do not owe silent days a response. A few weeks ago, a father from the clinic stopped me in the grocery store. He stood in front of the cantaloupes with a hand on a fruit like it was a head that needed steadying. "You cost us friends," he said without hello. "I know," I said. "You made us look stupid," he said. "No," I said. "I made it impossible for you to keep a lie quiet." Looking stupid is usually what truth looks like at first. He put the cantaloupe back gently. "My daughter is doing better at the new place," he said, almost grudging. "They do not promise. They call me when it is hard. They do not talk about compliance like it is a trophy." "That sounds like work," I said. "It is," he said. "It is exhausting. It is also real." He walked away without thanking me and I did not take this as an insult. He is busy doing the thing that matters. Gratitude is not part of the contract. Dignity is. When I close the shop now, I still run my hand along the line where the bench meets the wall. It is my plumb line, my steady. I have learned that revenge, as people like to costume it, is noisy. Justice is quiet. It is a footnote, a missing license, a line on an invoice that will not hold under the weight of a photograph. It is a grandfather who will show up with a folder and a jaw he has to unclench. It is a bored chair who remembers she got into education to tell the truth to people who did not want to hear it. It is a judge who asks where a child will sleep. It is a man who does not care whether a room loves him while he says what needs saying. If you ask me what I am proud of, I will tell you about a clock that now keeps time because a girl with blunt bangs and a steady hand fitted a gear back into place. I will tell you about a footnote that turned out to be the hinge. I will tell you about a horizon you can walk toward that has nothing to do with a clinic and everything to do with a kitchen table at 7:30 a.m. with cereal and a pencil and a schedule that respects both the child and the day. I did not get my son back. That is the sentence that makes people look down at their shoes. It is the cost. It is also the truth. I am old enough to accept a cost and still not move the line. I am a man who set a trap with a sentence in 12-point font. I am a man who caught a lie without catching a child. I am the grandfather who will be where the child looks first when the poem ends and the lights are too bright. And I am satisfied, not with triumph, but with the low, even hum that a balanced thing makes when it is finally running the pace it was built to run.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.